Deadpool Wolverine has finally hit theaters, and after the 20th Century Fox merger, it wasn't clear if that was actually going to happen or not, or if these characters would ever be played by these actors ever again, but through the power of Ryan Reynolds and Kevin Feige, here we are, and the film is finally released. Now, to be completely upfront, I'm going to have a spoiler-free and spoiler-filled section of this video. I will indicate when I'm going to get into spoilers, so any of you who haven't seen the movie yet, don't worry, I'm not going to totally ruin it for you. Now, just coming right out of the gate, I absolutely loved this movie. I've already seen it twice at the time of recording this video, and I think that there is so much about this movie that is just, it makes for good entertainment. When I went and saw the movie on opening night, the crowd in the theater was just electric. They came alive at the huge moments. There was cheers, there was applause, there was life in that theater. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, they come back to these characters like they never left. Ryan Reynolds, of course, being on a 6-year hiatus after there being a lot of shuffling around with the 20th Century Fox merger, and Hugh Jackman being on a 7-year hiatus because, well, he had turned in the claws. He was done being Wolverine. And suddenly now, thanks to a lot of money and influence, he's back in the saddle. Now, of course, he is playing a different version of Wolverine because they didn't want to tarnish the legacy that the film Logan from 2017 left after concluding that character's story arc in a very meaningful and powerful way. And I'm glad this is the case because Logan is one of my favorite films of all time, and I really didn't want them to absolutely ruin that ending just to make a couple extra bucks and say that, hey, we have Wolverine in the MCU now. So Hugh Jackman is playing an alternate version of Wolverine, and they talk about what makes this Wolverine different, his backstory, how it affects him, and how that differs from the Logan from Deadpool's timeline. Hugh Jackman commits to this role, even though the movie is really silly and over the top at times. He is still playing the character like he's in a serious film. And I really like that because he brings this intense ferocity to his character through his performance, and it really does add a little bit more of an emotional weight to the film. They got to give the film heart somehow. All the Deadpool movies have had some sort of emotional tie, and though it's not as strong in this one per se as, say, the first film, they do try to use Logan as a vehicle for that kind of sentimentality. Overall, the jokes are pretty funny. A lot of them are really meta in their commentary, so viewers who haven't seen the X-Men franchise or followed all the drama behind the scenes with the Fox films, they aren't gonna know quite as much as people who, like me, were invested in that series and knew about all the stuff that was happening and are able to pick up on all those niche throwaway jokes. I think overall people are still going to find this funny if you're into that kind of Deadpool shtick, but you're going to pick up on more if you have seen more of those films and just know about more to Marvel than just the MCU. The action was really fun, and this is the thing I was the most concerned about going in, was because Sean Levy, or Levi, or however you say his name, I'm not too familiar with him as a director. I mean, I know he did Night at the Museum and the Adam Project and Free Guy, I believe, but I'm not too immersed in his kind of style. I wouldn't really say that when I watched those movies, I was like, oh yeah, this is how a Sean Levy film feels. But this certainly captured a lot of the stylistic nature of the previous Deadpool movies. The first Deadpool movie, of course, had a lot of slow-mo stylistic shots that Tim Miller brought to the table. And the second one definitely carried that over while still keeping David Leitch's style. But this one I was more concerned about because I didn't really know what Deadpool directed by Sean Levy would look like. Thankfully, though, he definitely incorporates elements from both and makes for some pretty awesome fight scenes. Now, granted, not all this is going to fall on Sean Levy's shoulders. They're going to have fight choreographers, they're going to have visual effects artists, they're going to have cinematographers. But I think that the tag team effort that they had for those action sequences really clocked into work on those days and did a really good job with what they had. Now, it is really interesting seeing what an R rating looks like in the MCU. Now, granted, this is basically just, continuing the Fox films, but this is a MCU Phase 5 project, and so seeing something with, a little bit more language than normal and some pretty gory violence is really interesting and kind of just brought a fresh new flavor to this franchise, which is something that I think everyone was looking for, especially after the past few movies being kind of a, let's just say, not so stellar at the box office. Now, the plot is totally bonkers. There is just one thing after another, tons of exposition from start to finish. Matthew McFadden as Paradox was, I don't know, is a pretty entertaining performance. I think he played the character well, but he definitely is just an exposition dispenser. From beginning to end, he is just constantly explaining stuff, whether it be the logic or how something works or what's going to happen, yada, yada, yada. But overall, I did get a kick out of his performance, as I am a huge fan of Succession, and seeing him in something outside of that show was really cool. Emma Corrin, who played Cassandra Nova, was a really amusing villain, I guess. She's pretty one-dimensional, doesn't have a whole lot of connection to the characters as a whole because she is the twin sister of Charles Xavier, and there's not really a whole lot there in terms of connecting her to Deadpool, even Wolverine. It's just weird. I mean, she's all right. She's a really crazy villain, and I think Emma Corrin definitely had a lot of fun playing the character, but it's just hard to tell, like, what is her motivation? Why is she doing any of this? It's not really there. And the other thing too is just stuff just keeps happening left and right, and they keep finding an easy explanation as to how they get out of it, or just, you know, plot conveniences here and there. Plot armor and conveniences are littered throughout this entire movie, but at the same time, they have fun with it. They play off the tropes. Now, granted, calling out lazy writing and making meta commentary toward what's happening in a movie is no excuse for them just doing it anyway. I will say though, I think the biggest reason I did enjoy this plot is because there's a lot more thematic meaning to what's happening here. So when you consider the whole thing with the 20th Century Fox merger and how that basically wiped out the X-Men franchise as we knew it, that is basically a metaphor for everything that's happening here. But quite frankly, all the criticism lobbed at this film, I don't care. I had a blast with this movie. Yes, it's a stupid, over-the-top, ridiculous, convenient movie, but I had so much fun with it. It was absolute chaos from start to finish. There were jokes and references that I understood, and I just had a smile on my face from start to finish. Did the theater experience, all these other super fans in the crowd with me, impact my decision to give this a high rating? Probably. I mean, there's plenty of stuff in this movie that's meant to make you point at the camera like you're Rick Dalton in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But, I mean, all that nostalgia bait and those member berries, yeah, am I a sucker for it and did I fall for that trap? Probably. So if you want a grounded take on this movie, I guess you don't want to listen to me. But if you want to know what I thought, because I had a great time with this, and I am a fan of this franchise, and I just was looking for an excuse to enjoy a new Marvel movie because a lot of them recently have been pretty lackluster. That's where I'm at with it. It's a lot like No Way Home, where, yeah, there's a lot in there that just, when you start to think about it, it doesn't really make sense and it doesn't really work, but it doesn't stop me from enjoying it every single time I watch it, just because there's so much about it that I love. It's built on the back of a franchise from yesteryear, but I still get so much enjoyment out of it, and that's why I will always continue to defend it. It's just such a special story to me, and that's how I'm feeling about this one as well. I'm not trying to shill for Disney or any of that and anything. I enjoyed it because I know when Disney screws up, and I know when to call them out. I've done it before, and I'll continue to do it again. I felt that it was necessary to address all the flaws in the film, but acknowledge that it really did not affect my ranking because I had such a good time with the film. Okay, so we're going to get into the spoiler section of this video right now. So here's the time code if you want to skip to my final score of the film. This is the time that you want to skip to. Otherwise, brace yourself. We're going to get into spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Basically, the TVA is done with the Fox universe and wants to prune it, as they have been shown to do in Loki. And that's why they've called in Deadpool, because they want him to work for them and help them in this whole process. And as a reward, he will be able to be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this is prime allegory for exactly what Disney is doing to the Fox universe. Disney bought 20th Century Fox, didn't want to play with any of those toys anymore, and now they want Deadpool in their franchise because they realize he's the only marketable and financially successful asset that franchise had to begin with. At least that's currently running, because Hugh Jackman is no longer being Wolverine and he's really the only one there. That right there I thought was a pretty good metaphor for what was happening, and it made my enjoyment for the film a lot greater. Paradox is this guy in a suit who doesn't care what anyone else thinks. He wants to do whatever he wants to do because he wants to be this, as he claims, mercy killer. And that just seems like the exact thing that the studio executives were doing when they were making this decision. So why is Wolverine in any of this? Paradox is basically saying the reason he wants to wipe out this universe is because Wolverine from that universe was an anchor being. And basically, after Logan died, that kind of spelled a bad future for the Fox universe and would eventually peter out and die later down the line. And he wanted to speed things up because he didn't care. He didn't want to wait that long. He wanted results now. And when one considers like, okay, this is dumb. Like Logan wasn't alive throughout the entirety of that universe and that timeline. That doesn't make any sense. He was alive for 200 years, sure, but why is he the anchor being? Well, again, it's representative of that franchise. Like the X-Men franchise was basically carried by Wolverine. The studio gave him like all the attention in those movies. And after Wolverine died at the end of Logan in 2017, the rest of the franchise didn't really matter. Sure, Deadpool 2 was successful, but nobody really cared about Dark Phoenix or New Mutants. So, yeah, I think that as a metaphor worked really well. For some people, it's not going to work at all, and I totally understand. So obviously the biggest thing that everyone's talking about in terms of spoilers with this movie are the cameos. Yes, there's a lot of them. Yes, they're gratuitous. Yes, they are definitely member berries. I don't care. They are awesome, and they made this so much fun, especially with all the meta commentary about the Fox merger and with the TVA being an allegory for Disney. When you consider all of that, this just makes it that much better. Bottom line, they're fun. They were enjoyable, and it was awesome seeing them come on screen, and the crowd erupted when they actually appeared. And who am I talking about? You already know. We're talking about Chris Evans coming back as Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four. The whole fake out, making it seem like he was going to be Captain America, I saw that coming a mile away. The second I heard his voice, I'm like, that's Chris Evans right there. And when he whipped the hood back and he showed his haircut, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not Captain America. That's definitely Johnny Storm. And then sure enough, they drum up the whole thing with the Avengers assemble, and oh no, he's not saying that. He's saying "flame on," and it was great. I loved it. I don't care. I will not apologize for having fun with that scene. I gotta say, it was just kind of weird seeing him in the R-rated setting. I mean, a lot of these characters, all of them basically, except for a few of them, were PG-13 specifically. And so when Johnny Storm comes in and he's like spouting off profanities just like Deadpool, it's like, whoa. Okay. So for the record, I totally forgot to mention this while I was on camera, but all those Wolverine appearances during the montage where he's finding all the different alternate versions of Wolverine, that was really cool. I loved all the homages to the original iconic images from the comic books. And of course, seeing Henry Cavill as a variant of Wolverine was just such a nice treat. By the way, did anyone else catch the fact that Chris Evans was definitely wearing a hybrid of both the Fantastic Four and Captain America costumes? Because yeah, he's playing Johnny Storm and whatnot, and you can definitely see the Fantastic Four suit, but his belt, cargo pants, and boots were definitely from his Captain America suit, because Johnny never wore anything like that in those movies. Now, Laura was already spoiled in the trailer, and I thought that was a really stupid move on their part. They clearly were building that up in the movie, and why did they have to put that in the trailer? The trailer dropped like literally a week before the movie came out. There was literally no reason for them to do that, but here they are doing it anyway. Whatever. Elektra, I completely forgot about. I knew that Jennifer Garner supposedly had filmed scenes for this movie, and that was all like headlines and everything. What I had no expectation for was seeing Wesley Snipes' Blade. That was wow. And I just loved the joke banter between him and Ryan Reynolds saying like, I didn't like you. You never did. You know, like that was good. So clearly, whatever differences they had from the set of Blade Trinity, they've put behind them. Or at least Wesley Snipes has paid enough money to just bite his tongue about it and appear at Comic-Con, but whatever, I don't care. It made for good banter, and it was a great scene. Channing Tatum's Gambit. I was hoping this one would happen. I was happy to see it happen. It was kind of surreal because this was a casting that was made so long ago and then never got anywhere with all the delays, and the Fox merger just killed it eventually. And I'm glad that Channing Tatum was actually able to play this character, because he has been longing for it for a very long time. Now, I will say, the suit, not amazing, not perfect, but I do think it looked pretty comic accurate, and it fit his face a little weird, but it was better than Taylor Kitsch, whatever that was supposed to be. seeing him actually use the playing cards and the bow staff and them actually exploding and glowing purple, that was really, really cool. I loved all the fight scenes with him. They even referenced that, like, the Punisher supposedly was part of their team, and they don't really clarify who, because there's a joke about, like, oh, well, there's been like 5 Punishers, so who is it? If I had to venture a guess, I would say that it was probably going to be Ray Stevenson, but he passed away sadly, and so they probably just couldn't make it work. Maybe they tried for Thomas Jane as well, but my money would be on Ray Stevenson. I just got to ask about the X-Men universe. Like, Deadpool somehow was able to travel to the MCU and then came back into his own universe, which is 10,005, and so that's the X-Men universe. But then, like, Laura lived on past Logan and was able to mature up until, like, however old she is now. And now she's living with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, this variant from this movie, and with Deadpool and his friends. And so does that mean that she is living in 2024, which is when this movie takes place? Does that mean she's living in the same time period that a younger version of herself would live in, since this is the same timeline and Logan took place in 2029, so she wouldn't quite... multiverse stuff, but this is just the stuff I think about. Cassandra Nova as a villain is kind of a weird one too, because it's like, okay, she lets them go and she's almost seemingly reformed in that moment when she just lets them go back to their home, but then she's also planning on destroying it with the Time Ripper. So, like, what was the point of that? The Deadpool core action scene was really fun, really cool. If you remove that scene from the movie, it does absolutely nothing to the overall plot, I will say. It was just another excuse for them to make another action sequence with Deadpool, Wolverine, a bunch of stuntmen. And we finally, after all these years, got the Wolverine cowl. It's no longer sitting in the suitcase that is going to be left in the deleted scene. It is actually in the film, on the actor, and it looks amazing. I don't know why they thought this wouldn't look good any time prior. I don't know why it took this long to get a comic accurate Wolverine suit. I wish we had gotten it sooner. Deadpool even jokes about how it took 20 years to get to the point where he's wearing a suit in the movies. I'm glad they were at least willing to do it for this movie. The film's ending was, of course, pretty cool. I mean, they had that moment where Deadpool and Wolverine are ready to sacrifice themselves to save their universe. And then, of course, naturally, because of plot armor, they survive this so they can, go back to normal. I don't know, are they going to bring them back in Secret Wars? I guess the door's open, I mean, why wouldn't you if you could? I mean, they're already bringing back Robert Downey Jr. to play Doctor Doom in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, so I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Hugh Jackman, and Ryan Reynolds all of a sudden pop up to play their respective characters too. I mean, it wouldn't be that much of a stretch. Would it be expensive? Yeah, but when has Disney ever shied away from spending way too much money on a movie before? There's a lot of criticisms you can lob at this movie, but overall, I am not the least bit concerned about any of that because I had such a good time with this. So, what are you thinking, John?
Yeah, I'm thinking!
I'm glad we're on the same page. Yeah, that's right. Again, this is a film that I just loved. I clicked with it. It resonated with me. It hit me where I was supposed to be hit. That's not to be an excuse for lack of quality in media and for people to just, get off easy by saying, hey, well, at least this person likes it. No, we still need to actually try. But at the same time, don't be bogged down by someone else's opinion just because you like something that they don't. Right now, it is succeeding and smashing records at the box office, so that's a really good thing for it too. And overall, I just want this to succeed. I want Marvel to come back and be a franchise that people can rally behind and be supportive of, because it's been a long time since we've had that kind of momentum behind a Marvel project. Now, are we going to get that? Is this saving the universe? Who's to say? Right now, we have one good movie, and that's something that we can all cherish, hopefully. Sometimes it doesn't matter how many flaws a film has or how many things you wish you could change. Sometimes you just find a film that works for you, resonates with you, might not be the highest art on the planet, but you just had such a good time with it, you can't give it anything other than a perfect score. That is the goal, I think, of the entertainment industry, is to connect with people and give them something to enjoy, regardless of whether that's an art house piece from the 1950s that not many people know about, or that's the biggest blockbuster that just hit the theater. Either way, when you find a movie you love, you know it when you see it, and right now, I know it because I just saw it. Alright, so that pretty much does it for my review of Wolverine. Be sure to comment down below, tell me whether you liked this movie or you didn't. I'd be really happy to read whatever people's arguments are either way. Just be respectful about it, no need to be a jerk, okay? After all, this is just a movie, this isn't the most important thing in the world, so until then, God be with you, and take care.